Hey guys, I know it's November, but there's some loose ends from October, the Halloween, the horror movies, the Scare-a-thon I did. Some loose ends I wanted to kind of touch on, some things I didn't get to talk about during some of those Scare-a-thon movies. And one of those things are some of the horror movies in my collection that I feel like are underrated horror films. Also wanted to mention I am still watching The Walking Dead Season 2. I had mentioned that in some of my Scare-a-thons that I was trying to get into The Walking Dead. But I don't want to talk about The Walking Dead, but it made me think of something I wanted to talk about in some of those Scare-a-thon movies, and that is a TV series from Britain that I liked a lot. A mini-series, really, called Dead Set. If you're not familiar with it, the premise is that the group of people in the Big Brother house from the reality show Big Brother are unaware of a zombie outbreak that has happened. Now, Big Brother is a much bigger show overseas than it is in America, much more popular, and it's interesting that it was the real set and the real host of Big Brother during this zombie outbreak. Now, in the in the miniseries Dead Set, you're more or less following one of the production assistants as the zombie outbreak happens, and she ends up trying to escape from zombies by going into the Big Brother house. And of course, there's these group of people who are totally unaware of what's happening. They think the show is still going on, and it ends up being a last stand against the zombies in the Big Brother house. I think it's like 4 or 6 episodes, somewhere in there, and it was really good. Good zombie effects, good zombie kills and gore, and it also had some funny moments in it as well. So I don't know if it's available in the U.S. on DVD or Blu-ray. Probably should have looked that up, but I'm sure somebody can let us know down below in the comments. Another thing I recently came across right towards the end of October is a blind buy of a movie that I've heard good things about, but I had never seen. It's a movie from the 80s, Return of the Living Dead. Best Buy had it for $5, and that's a good price point for a Blu-ray for a blind buy for me, especially a movie that I'd heard good things about. And I'm so glad I bought it. I really enjoyed the movie. Now, I want to do a more in-depth kind of review of this after I watch the documentary More Brains. It's not a documentary that's included on this, but it's a documentary that came out, I think, either early this year or last year, which is about this movie. And I've heard good things about that documentary, so I thought it'd be good to wait until I've seen that documentary and kind of do like a dual review. Now, getting into the actual movies that I own in my collection that I feel like are horror movies that are underrated. The first ones I'm going to go over here are DVDs, and this first one goes into that creepy kid genre. Movies like The Bad Seed, The Good Son. These are movies where it seems like the kid is probably heading towards serial killer. Joshua, I think, is a really good one of those creepy kid films. Sam Rockwell's the dad, and Vera Farmiga is the mother, which is interesting because she's also the mother in Orphan, which I don't know how she got typecast as the mother of crazy kids, but I guess she did. But a good creepy kid film. It's played very straight. You know, it's not tongue-in-cheek or campy or anything like that. It's really well done. It's and because it's played real serious, it makes it even more creepy because it feels like something that could really happen. So, yeah. So I feel like that's underrated. You don't hear about Joshua very much. This next movie is a ghost story that's included on this 8-movie set that you can find for cheap. It's called Below. I'll see if I can get up close to it. I don't know if you can see that. But it's the movie Below, directed by a director I like. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. David Towie. Anyway, he's the director of movies like Pitch Black, The Arrival, Perfect Getaway, of course, Chronicles of Riddick, which was the sequel to Pitch Black. But most of those movies I like quite a bit. He seems like a modern B-movie director to me. Like, he makes really good B-movies. And Below is in that category, in my opinion. It's a good, solid ghost story that takes place in a submarine during World War II. So that concept is really interesting. Another interesting thing to me is Darren Aronofsky is credited with a story for the movie. So if you're a fan of his movies, that might be something of interest to you. Zach Galifianakis has a small role, one of his early roles, and he's really good in it. And it's just a good, creepy ghost story, kind of a mystery surrounding the ghost, the supernatural elements that kind of unfolds. But really well done. I like war movies, I like submarine movies, and I like ghost stories. And this was a perfect kind of mix of those things. A movie I saw on Netflix Instant Watch that I liked quite a bit, Pontypool. Really interesting concept. It's in that genre of kind of apocalyptic where people suddenly start going crazy. They're not zombies, but something snaps and people start going crazy for whatever reason, and they're violent, and there's usually a group trying to survive against these crazy people. Like The Crazies is the most obvious choice in that genre. In this movie, it's a low budget film, but it's done in, I think, a really smart way. It's a radio talk show host is on air. This is somewhere in Canada, I'm pretty sure Canada. And as he's broadcasting, the kind of outbreak happens where people are going crazy. So he's got callers coming in, kind of explaining the violence and craziness that's going on. So he's trying to talk through it, trying to figure things out, and he's got his producer there and the person running the board. So there's really just 3 characters for most of the movie. But then towards the end, the crazy people start storming the radio station. So most of the violence is talked about and you hear it, but then it does, come to a head there towards the end of the movie. But what starts to unfold is that this outbreak is kind of like this audible virus. It's something embedded within the words people are saying. And there's some interesting, like, you can kind of try to put your own spin as to what that means. Is it a metaphor for something? I don't know. I found that kind of interesting, but so check it out if you haven't seen it. I think it's underrated. This next movie, another movie I found on Netflix Instant Watch. I had read some good things about it. It's called The Burrowers, and it's kind of a mashup genre of a western and a horror film. And in this, there's creatures underground that's the horror aspect, kind of like Tremors, but it's played more straight, isn't it? It's not comedy horror, which Tremors I like quite a bit. But this is also very good. It's shot really well. Like, it's shot like a really good western, yet it's got these horror aspects to it. It's also got some actors I like in it, like Clancy Brown. And one thing to mention, it does have a very abrupt ending. But overall, I feel like the movie's still really good, and it's effective, and overall just underrated in my opinion. Grace. I talked about the type of horror films that are fun horror films. This is the dark, kind of disturbing horror film. And basically the premise here is a mother has a baby who, it appears, has to feed on blood. The reasoning, the rationale for it is kind of left up to you, but there are some hints as to maybe why the child needs to feed on blood. But it's one of those movies that the less you know about it, the more disturbing and interesting it is as you watch it. But there's the themes of motherhood throughout the film. not only with the actual mother with her child, but her mother-in-law also, who has a creepy presence all of her own. It's just a really well done, kind of disturbing film. Underrated film in my opinion. It kind of reminded me of like the 70s horror of like Rosemary's Baby and those types of films. This next one may not be underrated really. I think this has really gained a cult status over time, but I thought I'd include it anyway. I like it a lot. It's Frailty. I was hoping to revisit it during October. I just didn't have time. But Bill Paxton actually directed this movie, and I think he did a really good job. Guy remembering his childhood, and in his childhood, his single father was convinced that they had to rid the world of demons that existed around them, and he was finding these people and killing them. He was on a quest from God to conquer these demons or kill these demons. So it's this guy and his little brother trying to deal with this situation with their father. But again, it's another movie that you can't talk too much about it without giving some things away. But just know this, it's a really good movie. Bill Paxton stars as the father. I thought it was directed really well too. Some good creepy moments throughout. And I love the way it ends. Put it that way. Frailty. So check that out if you haven't seen it. Now this next one I think is underrated. It's a ghost story called 100 Feet. And it's written and directed by Eric Red, who he wrote some great movies that you may be familiar with. The Hitcher. If you haven't seen The Hitcher, that's a great movie. It's about a woman who had been convicted of killing her abusive husband. And she's been released from prison, but she's still under house arrest. So she has the bracelet on the ankle, and she has to stay within 100 feet of her home, thus the name. But the twist there is the home that she goes back to is the home where she killed her husband, and his ghost haunts it's a New York apartment really. But it's got some great stuff in it. She's haunted by her abusive husband. And there's a great scene at the end where somebody just gets their ass kicked by the ghost of her husband. And it's just brutal and just crazy. It's a low-budget film, but it's a really cool concept, I think. And very enjoyable. So if you like ghost stories, check it out. 100 Feet. Again, another low-budget horror film, and we're back to that genre of crazy people, an outbreak of crazy people. And this is The Signal. Some of you may be familiar with this movie, but basically there's some type of signal through the television that's driving people insane. And this movie is kind of set up in sections, kind of like something like Pulp Fiction, where separate stories are happening, but they're connected. Basically, the thread throughout is this love triangle. This woman's cheating on her husband, who you get the sense that he was an abusive husband. A little bit of a connection there to 100 Feet. Then this outbreak happens, and it's about the we'll call him the new lover, trying to find the girl, them trying to find each other through this kind of apocalyptic outbreak. And it's, there's violence, gore, but there's also a lot of funny parts to this. It was directed by 3 different people, and I think it's the middle section that's the funny one. If you have movies in your collection or know of horror movies that you think are underrated, let me know below in the comments, as well as what you think of the movies I showed here in this video. If you've seen Dead Set, let me know what you think of Dead Set. So yeah, let me know what you think, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks.